So get yourself into transition number 1, get on your bike, make sure that you left it in an easier gear, because the first little bit of the bike out the parking lot and up the hill is uphill. It's only going to be a minute or two, but you're going to want to spin those legs out, get them used to being on a bike as opposed to in the water. That way you're comfortable when you start your descent. Okay? The first downhill of the bike is about 6.2 miles. Okay? So I'm going to put a graphic up of the entire bike elevation profile. For you guys doing the Olympic distance, it's essentially a down and then an up. Okay? So you've got 40K, about 20K down, 20K up, with a few rollers in between. Don't get me wrong, it's not just down and up, and we'll talk specifics in a second. But you are going to be essentially going down and then traveling up at the last half of the bike. So be prepared for that. Make sure you put some hills into your training. So the first 6.2 miles, you're going downhill. Again, like I said in the other video, frost heaves, cracks in the pavement. If you're not really comfortable in your aero position, make sure that you're upright and in the hood so that you can properly get down the hill without having any kind of crash or anything like that. I would hate to see that happen, especially right at the beginning of the race. So be careful. Don't pass anybody if you're not comfortable. Make sure you take your time getting down to the bottom of the hill, but still, proceed quickly. And then you get to mile around 8.3 or so, where you're going to crank back up, and then you're going to go back down till about mile 10.2. Okay? Now, at this point, you're approaching going into the center of Bethlehem, where there's a pretty decent climb. Okay? So you're going to want to get into an easy gear, keep the legs moving pretty quickly. Cadence high on climbs is a good thing, and you don't want to get yourself out of the saddle and start really moving around, because the more moving around you do, the more energy you spend. You're going to notice that your breathing gets harder and harder, and that your heart rate goes up. So just relax, sit back in the saddle, trust your training, trust yourself. Keep those legs moving. It's going to feel like you're going really slow, especially compared to the first half of the race where you're going downhill for a really extended period of time. But that's okay, because your average speed is going to be really high, and then we're going to just gradually get it back to where you're at. And by the time you're done with the race, you should be at your normal race pace as if it were a flat, because you've gotten that downhill and then a little bit of uphill. Okay? That brings us to about mile 12.8 or so, where you've got a nice little downhill for about 2.5, 3 miles. Okay? At that point, I recommend you keep moving the legs, because you're going to want to spin out as you go downhill, because then you've got to climb to the end of the race. So that little spurt of hill in Bethlehem, getting into Bethlehem, is going to zap you a little bit, but if you stay under control, you'll be totally fine. Utilize the downhill, get some nutrition, get some hydration in there, make sure that you compose yourself, a few deep breaths to keep the heart rate down, and then we're back into the hills. Okay? So the last 9 miles are uphill. So it's the same finish course as the half. So we're going to climb up the main road, and then we're going to turn onto a bike path, which is still paved, and it's going to get a little bit steeper, and you're going to finish crossing over at a bridge, 1/4 mile downhill into the transition area, and you're good to go. Your aid stations for the ride are at mile 8 and mile 15. There'll be water available and gels, so make sure that you have some kind of nutrition in your drink if you are looking for that, because at the mile 8 and 15, there won't be any Gatorade Endurance or anything like that. So if you're drinking your nutrition, make sure you have it in your own bottles and that you have enough. 2 bottles should be pretty good for an Olympic distance race. So if you have your standard bike, you should be able to carry your stuff.